Welcome in everyone to a new episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. You with Steve Wyss and Jonathan Faduba. We're getting right to the business end of the season now. Just one round left in Allsvenskan and there's 3 rounds left in Eliteserien. We've had several teams in European action, so there's lots to catch up on. It's getting tasty, Jonathan. How's things been with you? What have you been up to?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this latest episode. Good to be with you as usual. We're back. And yes, Steve, I've actually had a nice little break. Season's nearly over in Sweden now, so I took myself away for a few days out in Spain. Went to watch Real Betis, which I did text you as well at the point. We were talking about that, weren't we, on the texts? But yeah, nice little bit of midwinter break. Got a nice bit of sun. Walked around the beautiful city of Seville. So yeah, I feel quite refreshed, to be fair. And we've got, like you said, a lot to talk about. The Europe games, few upsets, few shocks, a few interesting results, and then we're going to talk about the last round of Allsvenskan in part 2, and of course Eliteserien, Steve. I definitely want to pick your brains on this because some big developments in the title race took place over the weekend as well. So yeah, plenty to get our teeth into, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. When I heard you were going to Seville, that was the first thing I looked at, whether Real Betis or Sevilla were playing at home that weekend, because that's the first thing I would have looked at. So immediately I said, get yourself to Real Betis for the match against Mallorca, I think it was, and you duly obliged. Knew you wouldn't be able to resist that one. But yeah, lots to discuss, and an interesting week on the actual soccer field. It's always a good time to get me on a Thursday for a recording, actually, because the amount of Europa and Conference League games I watch is absurd. I'm like 4 screens on each sort of kickoff time. But I suppose really we've got to go all the way back to Tuesday, where I didn't actually, unfortunately, I couldn't watch the Bodo Glimt match this week. But I had a cricket AGM meeting, which I could not avoid, and I was disappointed to see them lose against Monaco. Saw the highlights, seemed it was maybe a harsh defeat for them. But I mean, more on Glimt soon in the Eliteserien title race. But that's one of the very few times that they've lost at home. And usually it's a team of high caliber that beats them. I don't put Monaco in that high caliber bracket. They're all right, but they're nothing special. So disappointing. They were the favourites to actually win, Jonathan. I think we all expected them to get at least a point in that game. But they're still looking for the first win in the Champions League standings, which is a blow for them.
Yeah, and a late red card for Justin Gunderson couldn't have helped, of course. So yeah, Glimt are in a bit of. I mean, like you said, we'll talk about this probably later on. And I did ask you after that game, like, what's your thesis on Glimt, because they're struggling a little bit. But you're gonna have to wait to get Steve's insights on that, because we're not going to talk about Glimt in detail just yet. We will talk about them later on in the show. But yeah, disappointing result following Balogun, of course, from Arsenal Academy. Magnus Akliush, Steve, is a very highly rated player. I know you still love your League One, and he got the assist. No Paul Pogba, of course, for Monaco, but they had Akliush and Balogun up front. Golovin. There, I do still enjoy my French football, and probably playing style wise, Monaco, I don't know, it's kind of a team that Glimt might struggle against physically. But then again, like you say, when at a home match, you expect them to win. I mean, in terms of maybe not expecting to win, but you'd think they could get a result potentially. Looking at the table, Steve, that leaves it with 4 games played now. I think that's halfway through the group stage, isn't it? Pretty much. So Glimt are currently 29th out of 36 in the monstrous league table. 2 points, like you said, no wins so far, 2 draws, 2 defeats. Just strictly speaking about Glimt, we won't talk about the league matters yet, but just strictly speaking about the European games, Steve, it's still doable. They're still only 2 points behind Napoli in terms of getting into the playoff round, maybe. In that top 24, obviously they wouldn't be seeded, so they could potentially end up facing quite a difficult tie. Even if they did manage to do that at this moment in time, I think they'd play Galatasaray, which would, as we've seen, wouldn't be the easiest of results. But do you give them much hope going into the next fixtures? Their next game, Steve, is Juventus at home, who, although they're a big name, they're not necessarily the best of teams these days, although they have a new manager. But, Juve at home, then they've got another tough game, I believe, Steve. Just looking at
I don't give them another point, to be honest, Jonathan, sadly.
In the entire group stage.
Yeah, I mean, Juventus at home if Juventus throw in a stinker, maybe you've got a chance. But you're right about Monaco. The strength of Monaco. They got a new manager, former Royal Union Saint-Gilloise boss, who actually has played against Kjetil Knutsen before, a 0-0 draw. So Knutsen's not been able to score twice against that manager, which is really unusual. So maybe there's a system thing there that didn't suit them. But Juventus, think of their strengths. It's all attack, isn't it, really? And you got to think they'll probably outscore Glimt. Then they're against Dortmund away. Well, you can't imagine them getting anything there, can you? Manchester City at home. That could be any number Manchester City want. And then Atletico Madrid away. Maybe they could get something there if Atletico are already qualified or something. I don't know. But I think they're done now. They should have beaten Spurs, and the Monaco game for me was a must-win. I thought Monaco at home was their best chance of a win in this group stage, and they've actually lost the game. So I think they're just probably playing for pride now. Could they sneak a point somewhere? Maybe, but that's 4 tough games in it. I think it's asking a lot to get anything.
Do you think, just briefly, I said we wouldn't talk too much about Glimt, but we probably will. Personally, I think their biggest chance of getting a point is the Dortmund game. I don't really rate Dortmund, to be honest. I think they've always got a choke in them. They never really fully convinced me. I mean, they are a big team, and at home, of course, I've been to that stadium, and the Yellow Wall is an unbelievable ground. And as a club, they're quite admirable in some ways, in terms of the fan base and the stadium. But I feel like Glimt could go there maybe and impose their style. The other games, like you said, very tough. I think Kenan Yildiz is a really good player at Juventus. If he's on fire, then tough to stop. And the other two, well, unless City maybe rest some players, maybe they're through by that point. But do you think, Steve, there's any credence in some of these rumours that we're seeing recently, whereby, in particularly linking Kjetil Knutsen to teams like Celtic and one or two others, with the sort of like potential that they might go out of this group stage, and then it's a case of it's almost job done. He was, from some perspectives, he was looking at that, getting into that group stage as like his legacy. It's nearly done now. He's halfway through it. Don't know if they'll come back, but do you, just very briefly, maybe we'll touch on it as well when we talk about them a little bit later, but do you think there's any credence in that at all? Have you heard any rumours, any whispers from your point of view?
Well, I've always said I think this would be a good time for him to leave the club. If he's ever going to leave Bodo Glimt, now's the time. But whatever happens in the league, we'll talk about that soon. But it's the pinnacle, isn't it? They've reached the Champions League group stage. That's what he always wanted. They've got a couple of points on the board. They'll be desperate to try and get that first win. I just can't see it coming now. But, either way, they've managed to achieve an incredible objective. And it would be a good time for him to move. If he ever wants to, maybe he doesn't want to try pastures new. Maybe he's very happy there where he is. But also from a Glimt perspective, obviously if Knutsen did leave, that their next manager appointment's a big one as well. They've got to get that right, haven't they? Because he's been so unique. So it's a really big winter, I think, for the club in that respect. If we're starting next season still with Kjetil Knutsen in charge, he may well be like, who was that Rosenborg manager back in the day who was there for Yonks? What was it, Egil someone? I forgot his name. Yeah, he was there for about 20 years, wasn't he? It felt like he was anyway. Then we might get to a stage like that, but I think it's a pivotal few months for the actual manager and the club.
Very interesting stuff. Let's move on to some of the other games, because obviously we've had Europa League and Conference League action as well, Steve, and that's where as you've just said, you're fresh from your 4 screens. I don't know how you do it. You don't seem to wear glasses, which I think we need some tips, ocular tips, Steve. Do you eat a lot of carrots? I don't know, but certainly a man who has the ability to watch 4 screens at one time and not have strained sore eyes. I do think it's quite admirable. But let's look at the games, Steve, from the last few nights in terms of Conference League and Europa League. Obviously, this evening we've had Malmo 0, Panathinaikos 1. We've also had, Steve, Bologna 0, Brand 0. Massive point for Brand, in my opinion. Bologna went down to 10 men in that game. Charalambos Lykogiannis was sent off in the 23rd minute, which gave Brand maybe a bit more of a hope. And they managed to hold out for a very creditable point. And in the Conference League, we also had, I had my eyes on Palace Alkmaar, but I also had my eyes on Hacken Strasbourg, Steve. Interesting tie there. Rossinier and the sort of Blueco, Chelsea B, whatever you want to call that project. But yeah, Strasbourg got a 2-1 win at Hacken. Not played at their home stadium, Hacken, but played a different ground. And I think that's it. Am I right in saying? Am I missing
Yeah,
anyone?
yeah. I mean, let's start with Malmo. Malmo losing it to Panathinaikos. To be honest, they played better than I thought they would, actually, in this game. First half, in fact, in terms of the actual metrics, they out XG'd Panathinaikos, and Panathinaikos had a penalty in the game. In the first half, a penalty 20th minute. It was a little bit soft, I thought. Swiderski, former Napoli, I think. Swiderski, off the top of my head. Anyway, terrible penalty. But I've noticed that the backup keeper who's been playing the Europa games, he's not that bad, actually. Melker Elborg. I don't know why he's not playing in the league now. He's better than what Olsen's been producing for the last few months. Saving a penalty. It was a poor penalty, but you still got to save it. 3 out of 4 saves tonight. 4 out of 5 in the 1-1 draw against Zagreb. And they nearly held on for a nil. Well, I say hold on for a 0-0 draw. It was quite an even game, but Panathinaikos in the sort of last 25 minutes just showed a bit more desire, a little bit more extra quality, and they probably got what was, I thought, a deserved winner. But it wasn't a bad performance from Malmo. It was probably better than most people expected, but it does feel like they're just going through the motions a bit in everything now, Malmo. I think there's a massive winter ahead coming for them. But yeah, Panathinaikos getting the victory there and leaving Malmo just on 1 point in the table.
As a betting man, Steve, I know you have your eye on that side of the world, and I know you're quite a respected man in that field. Are you at the moment just sort of in fill your boots mode with Malmo? Just bet against them every single time they play because as we both know, they really are struggling at the moment, aren't they? Just poor, aren't they, at the moment?
Yeah, I've been betting against Malmo in every European game, and I'll continue to do so. The next 2 away games before Christmas are Nottingham Forest away and Porto away, so you'll have to take handicaps. But I think Forest and Porto win by at least 2-goal margin. I expect you'll probably agree with me there. And then in the new year, they've got Red Star at home, which is their most winnable game. But the problem is they'll be ice cold, won't they? Then 22nd of January is sort of the off season for Swedish teams, so they're going to be ice cold there. And then their last match is at Genk, and they'll lose that. I'll tell you now, that could be quite a big beating, actually. Genk are not a bad side. So, yeah, it's a good strategy I've been doing. It's last season was exactly the same. In fact, I fell into some traps last season where I did back them a couple of times in the league phase, and they were stonkingly awful. So they've not equipped themselves well in the Europa League. What they need to do is win the Conference League. Sorry, win the Swedish Cup next year. Get in the Conference League, not the Europa League. Malmo would do a lot better in the Conference League than Europa.
Yeah, like you said, they're sort of stinking out the joint at the moment, aren't they? Things not really going their way. The latest reports, Steve suggests, as I just mentioned to you before we came on air, that Erling Moo is one of the favourites for the job now, still vacant job. A lot of decisions, big decisions to be made at Malmo, really. They're currently in 33rd place, Steve, the only teams that they are doing better than. And this is a bit of a, what's the word I should use to describe it? If you're below Malmo in this table, then you certainly should be worried about yourself. Maccabi Tel Aviv, Nice, I don't know what's happening there, Steve, Jim Ratcliffe, Ineos, and Rangers. Are the only 3 teams with a worse record than Malmo currently in the Europa League. But fortunately, in Brighton news, and yeah, you're right. I think Forest should bat them really, but you never know. And it will be a really nice game that one. It would be a repeat of the European Cup final back in the sort of late 70s, I think, early 80s, with Brian Clough. So that'll be really a memorable sort of one for both sets of fans, I imagine. But Steve, higher up the table, going in great guns, to be honest, in 11th place, giving themselves a massive chance, really, of qualification at this moment in time, with 4 games played, is Bran. What can you say about this? Because from my point of view, I think that's a massive result away to Bologna. I'm just looking at the table, and Bologna are the 24th. So they're not really pulling up any massive trees, to be honest, even though they're such a big club in such a big league. They're 5th in the league in Serie A. So either they're not really focusing on the Europa League or something's going wrong there, because you think they might have the ability to do a little bit better. But let's talk about Bran, Steve. Great result.
Brilliant result. I betted against them tonight on the handicap. I expected them to get well beat by Bologna, but they had a nice little bit of helping hand. Bologna were reduced to 10 men early on. And, it's all well and good saying that. You've still got to get the result, haven't you? And they've hung on, I say hung on for a 0-0 draw. It was a really poor game. There wasn't many chances. And that's a big point for them because that is a result no one would have penned in for them. Everyone would have said they'll lose away to a Serie A team, surely. So, what's 7 points, I think, now for Bran in the table? And the one loss was only by 1 goal at Lille. They've got a chance, They could qualify for the next for the playoff round at least. They've got PAOK away. It's a tough place to go, but you might get something there. Fenerbahce at home and Midtjylland at home and Sturm Graz away. None of those games are easy, but equally you're not quaking in your boots, are you? Especially with 2 games at home. So they've got a chance. I think they only need 1 win, really. Would you say 1 win out of 4 and they'll qualify?
Well, do you put this down to? I mean, obviously the red card is a massive game changer, isn't it? But I still think that for a Norwegian team to go to Italy, in years past, you'd think they get battered even with 10 men, to be honest. So, what does it say about Bran? Their playing style? They've only conceded 2 goals in Europe so far in 4 matches. What does it say about their strengths, Steve, and what they're doing well at the moment?
I think it shows great heart. This is a tough scheduling spot for them recently. They've had no rest really in the last 2-3 weeks. So, it may well hit them this weekend, but it doesn't matter what happens in the league now, really. The focus can be on the Europa League now. I think it just shows that they are probably better coached than I've given credit for this season. I've kind of always I've been a bit down on them, haven't I, this year? Not mega down, but I've always been a bit skeptical. I think is a good word of it. I was dubious about the coaching change, and I think it does show that they are obviously well equipped to perform in Europe here, to keep a clean sheet away in Bologna, and fair play to them. They were a threat on the break, and they defended doggedly when they needed to. So well done to Bran. We could look back at that. That could be a massive, massive point for Bran. It might get them into the next round if they can just get another win somewhere.
Yeah, I think clean sheets against Rangers, obviously beat them 3-0. Clean sheet away at Bologna. Clean sheet against Utrecht. I think that's massively impressive. But they only actually conceded goals to Lille so far in that opening 2-1 defeat. So massive praise to Bran. I know they're well supported and they're going all guns blazing at the moment. And really massive good luck to them because if they could qualify, that would be unbelievable. If they were to finish in that sort of top seeded place, they could potentially end up playing someone like Lille again, actually, over 2 legs or Roma. So it will be tough. Could even end up playing Forest, Steve, who knows? But they're not even out of maybe automatic qualification. So who knows where it could go from here. All to play for Bran. So let's move on to Conference League. I did have an eye on a Hacken Strasbourg game a little bit as well. Tough game for Hacken. I think, they haven't had a great season. Let's be honest. A bit like Malmo for me in a way, kind of just petered out this season for them really and not really done too much, but still got that European action, which is an incentive for the fans and obviously keeps things fresh and going as well, keeps some interest there. Over in Hissingen, Julio Enciso, Steve, got the opening goal. Is he owned by Chelsea? Is he owned by Strasbourg? Who knows? Doesn't matter. He's scored for Strasbourg the opening goal. And then Steve, Marshall Godot. He's got a very interesting backstory, by the way. Came from non-league. Played for Margate in non-league, Steve. Went to Fulham and is now playing in Strasbourg in European football. So he's got a very interesting backstory. He got the second goal for Strasbourg before, almost immediately after, actually, just a couple of minutes later, John Paul Dembe pulled one back for Hack and gave him a bit of a lifeline. But the game then did sort of peter out, to be fair. And, the last 20, 25 minutes, not too much happened. It was interesting seeing Sebastian Nanasi, of course, playing for Strasbourg, former Malmo man. Such an incredible player for Malmo in the last few seasons before he left. He played 70 minutes and did okay. It wasn't incredible. Ben Chilwell, of course, for those with a Chelsea connection as well. He was out there. Liam Rossini, the manager of Strasbourg, he got a very interesting kind of backstory with all the Chelsea ties. But I don't know if you had any eye on this game at all yourself, Steve, as well. But yeah, the game was played, just to give a bit of background as well. The game wasn't played at Bravida Arena. It was played at Gamla Ullevi in Gothenburg, obviously because of the ground regulations and things like that. We did have a bit of a mumble about that off air. I had a bit of a grumble about this, Steve. I'm not a massive fan. Attendance is registered according to FootMob as 4,082. So you could have fit them all in Hissingen Stadium, Bradford Arena, quite comfortably, and still had spare room to fill. So I don't see what the need is for a bigger stadium when they can't. Probably that wouldn't have filled the original stadium. But listen, it goes above my pay grade, doesn't it? I guess that's a question for Alexander Schefferin. But did you have an eye on this game, Steve? And what were your perspectives?
Yeah, certainly did have an eye on the game. Do you know what? I thought Häcken played all right, Strasbourg got the win. It could have easily been a draw. The metrics were heavily in favour of Häcken, but it was one of those that it might be distorted because they were chasing the game for quite a long period. So I think Strasbourg will probably say they just about deserved it. But it's been encouraging, actually. I mean, they played Strasbourg and Rayo Vallecano, who are the two of the strongest teams in the Conference League, and they've been very competitive. They've got a point out of those. They've now got their hardest fixtures are out of the way. And, I'm looking at the last three games. They've got Zrinski away, Bosnian side, AEK Larnaca at home, and Slovan Bratislava away. They could lose all three, but they could win all three. They're that sort of games. And I think they've got a chance. I mean, the Conference League means a lot more to certain teams. Motivation is a big thing to consider. Lincoln Red Imps have 4 points in the table, and the Gibraltar side. And I've watched the Red Imps play, and they're approaching every game like it's a matter of life and death. That is what it means to these teams. If Häcken can bring that sort of mentality to the last three matches, they'll qualify, in my opinion.
Yeah, in fairness, I did say that the season's petered out, but like you say, they have actually given themselves a good account of themselves in Europe. They've kind of maybe they're a bit more focused, like you say. I have a sort of I don't know what it is about the Conference League, Steve, but when I look at the table, I get kind of excited. I like the Conference League table. I don't know what it is. There's so many like random teams that I think it gives it a bit of flavour.
Yeah, it does.
And it's like you say, a lot of these teams, this is genuinely like, it means everything to them playing in this competition. Even Palace, who are obviously, big Premier League team. They play big clubs every week. They seem to beat Liverpool every other week. But, the Alkmaar game, they were really up for it, the fans. It's the first ever time playing in Europe. Like, every club's got a bit of, it means a bit to every club in a different way. And I do think that lends a bit of excitement to the league, despite the fact that the quality of the teams maybe isn't the best. I don't know what you think about that, because obviously you've got, like you've just mentioned there, Lincoln Red Imps, you've got Shelbourne, Shamrock Rovers as well. Just these random teams where it means so much. Häcken are currently 28, Steve. So sandwiching between Alkmaar and Omonia and Nicosia. They are just 1 point off qualification, but it's a shorter group phase, isn't it? So they've still got a bit of work to do if they are going to qualify. But from what you've seen so far in European football, what's your considerations for, can they maybe even think about making it?
I think they can get in. It helps them. I think all the matches in the Conference League are before Christmas, so that is a real help. But they've got to win their one remaining home game. I forgot which one the home match is against. They've definitely got to win that, and then they're going to need to go probably to Zrinski and win that, because Bratislava's always the hardest fixture of the three. How many points?
They've got AEK Larnaca at home.
They've got to win that. They need to beat AEK Larnaca at home to have a chance of qualifying, in my opinion.
But it won't be at their home, really, will it? So it's sort of
well, yeah, I know. It's more to do with the away side are away. Do you know what I mean? Like AEK Larnaca in Cyprus, every day's a nice day there, isn't it? You go to Gothenburg in November. I mean, crikey. I mean, it can't be much fun in Gothenburg in November, surely.
I've lived there, and I can tell you, for one thing, it's one of the only places I've ever been where I think the snot running down my nose started to freeze in midair. When I vividly remember that, so it's definitely not a place you want to be walking around at night.
My gloves would be on. Let's just say that. You
100%.
know that. So yeah, they still do have an advantage to a degree. It's a real shame they're not on their own artificial surface. But good luck to them. I hope they get in. I mean, if they get in there, look at what Djurgården did last year. You just get a good sort of winter transfer period and get a bit lucky with the draw, and maybe Häcken won the league just a few years ago. I'm being really optimistic here, aren't I? Really
I
optimistic.
remember very well, but yeah.
And motivational. If any of the Heckin players are listening, you can do it and get yourself a deep run in this competition. Go on.
I think they need to get you in the changing room, Steve, with that motivational talk. You got me up for it, to be fair. But yeah, good luck to Hacken as well. And of course, hopefully they can round it off and qualify because, like I say, it is an interesting competition and they could face some really interesting teams. They've already had some good teams, I think, in terms of, some of the teams they've already played from that group. I think Strasbourg as well, they got a fascinating story. I remember you tipping them to even maybe win it in Strasbourg. So let's move on, Steve. We've got to start talking about Eliteserien because big things going on here. Now, I will ask you a question, listener question, but before I do that, I just want to sort of, I did send you a little text, didn't I, while I was sunning myself. I was sat by a swimming pool. I don't know why swimming pools are shut in the winter. Can anyone answer me that in Spain? Why do they close swimming pools? Because that was probably the main reason I went to this particular hotel.
And you couldn't get in the pool?
The pool was shut. And I remember last year, I was in Malaga and the same thing happened. The pool was shut and I chose a place with a pool. So, any Spanish listeners, or can anyone answer me? I could ask ChatGPT, but I can't be bothered. Why do Spanish hotels close the pool during the winter? Because it was still well over 20 degrees.
Maintenance.
But anyway, Steve, whilst I was sat on my deck chair, not in the pool, I looked at the results and I did send you a little cheeky text. And the reason I did that, Steve, was because I saw on Saturday, the 1st of November, Vålerenga 3, Buda Glimt 1. And I sent you a message at 3-0 down, Steve. And I said, what is going on here? So take it away.
Well,
what is going on?
I actually ended up watching this match on a bench in the middle of Harrogate Town Centre. It was one of those games I was in. I had a gym session. And to be honest, it wasn't a game that was really on my radar. Vålerenga Buda Glimt. Despite Glimt's scheduling issues, I still expected them to probably win the game quite comfortably, actually. Vålerenga have nothing to play for at all. They can't get into Europe. They're going to be between 5th and 9th. But what actually happened was Vålerenga got off to, they got 2 goals on the break. They look really up for it, Vålerenga. Why they would be up for it, I had no idea at all. But they just seemed really fired up. The crowd were loving it. It seemed very strange to me. Normally, these sort of teams are on the beach at that stage of the season, but they took advantage of some tiredness of Buda Glimt's legs, took the chances well. I think that was the big takeaway for me in the game. They were so dangerous. And that's what you've got to do against these big teams. You can't just sit back, can you, and take punch after punch after punch. You've got to go up the other end and give yourself not just an outlet, but genuine chances. That's what Vålerenga did so well in this game. And forget what the metrics look at the end because Glimt absolutely bombarded them in the last 25 minutes. They went 3-0 down and they got a goal back. And I actually thought Glimt might make it interesting. The keeper made 2 incredible saves to keep it at 3-1. If it had gone 3-2, maybe Buda Glimt could have equalised because there was about 10 minutes added on in the second half, maybe 12 minutes even. But it was one of those days where it just went Vålerenga's direction. Previously, a few days before that, Glimt had claimed a huge win, 2-1 away at Brann from behind when it didn't look like they were going to get that win. So that looked like the defining result of Eliteserien. And now the title is out of Buda Glimt's hands. And Kjetil Knutsen said after the game, he said, ultimately, we just didn't have the energy. He criticised the scheduling, said that the Brann game probably should have been arranged for earlier in the season, said that the Norwegian FA had a pretty good idea that the 2 teams would eventually be in Europe. And he criticised that. And ultimately, look, I said it. I've said it on previous pods. The schedule would catch up with Buda Glimt. It's happened before. And the reason it hasn't cost them before is because other teams have sort of choked or not been close enough to them. But as it happens this season, that slip-up could determine the Eliteserien title this season. But Vålerenga deserved it. It's obvious why the result happened. In a normal week, Buda Glimt would have just gone there and beat them, I'm pretty sure. But they looked pretty tired.
That leads me on to, I guess, the next result the next day, Steve. At this point, I think I was at the Betis game. I think when this game took place, or around there anyway. By the way, if you've never been to Spain and never been to see Real Betis, I do recommend it. They got some proper good fans, by the way. 54,000 crowd. Very much enjoyed that. But the next day, Steve, it put all the pressure on Viking. They went to Godset, who have obviously struggled this season, and they're fighting for their own lives. To be honest, with 3 games remaining, Steve, they're on the brink of relegation. But they took the lead against Viking, and at that point, you think to yourself, maybe Glimt have got away with one, but Viking managed to turn it around. Goals, and that's the character of champions, you could argue. Goals from Christensen and Peter Christensen, and an own goal from Hamish Stengel turned things around for Viking, and they were able to hold on and get the win, Steve. Massive 3 points. It does swing things in the favour of Viking now. With 3 games remaining, it is officially theirs to lose. If they win all 3 games now, they will be champions. They're 1 point clear of Glimt with 3 games to play. And that leads me on to the question from our loyal listener, who definitely is always engaged with our tweet, Steve. And it is Mr. Big Sig himself at Big Sig 5. He says, "Are Viking really going to do it?" And then his other question is, with the seasons coming to an end, what names should we be on the lookout for during the winter transfer window? Well, we might get into that a bit later, Steve. But firstly, over to you. Are Viking really going to do it?
Yeah, I said on the last pod, if they win all their remaining games, they'll be the champions. And obviously that has now proven to be quite a good prediction, hasn't it? Because if they do win their remaining 3 games, they will get the gold medal. They're not going to get a better chance. I mean, the 3 games remaining are HamKam, Vålerenga, and Fredrikstad. Now, HamKam are not officially safe yet, but 34 points on the board. I think they know that they've got enough now. Fredrikstad and Vålerenga are going to finish between 5th to 9th. Nothing to play for, although I said that about Vålerenga last week and they were monsters, weren't they? But on the face of it, good fixtures. Motivation's a huge factor. And look, they're a better side, aren't they? So it's up to them now. One thing I'll say when they fell behind is they have had to come from behind quite a few times this season in games, either to draw or to win. And I suppose it's maybe a good habit that they can come back. They don't want to get into the habit of doing that in the last 3 matches, though, because that's when the pressure's on you, isn't it? You want to get your nose ahead and control the game. That's one area of caution, I would say. But what an opportunity for Viking. It would be the first title, I think, in 34 years if they were to win the league. It does feel like now or never. If they don't win it this year, I think their window may have gone. So it's a huge 3 games. They've got to put everything into it. And, Bodø Glimt could finish on 70 points and not win the title, which would be incredible.
I'm going to sort of twist Big Sig's question a little bit, based on what you just said there about this could be now or never for Viking. When you say it could be never, is that because you think maybe some players might leave in the transfer window? They've shown an amazing resilience, like you said, to keep coming from behind. But what makes you say it's now or never, if that makes sense? Like, do you think they're a one-off club? Because they're quite a big club traditionally. So you think they'll be able to build on this maybe, or what makes you say that? And in your answer, maybe you could just factor in, are there any other players that might be on the move in the transfer window, just to sort of touch on Big Sig's second question?
Well, it's a good squad, but it's not an amazing squad. There's a reliance in a couple of areas of sort of experienced players.
But playing devil's advocate, if, as you said earlier, this might be it for Knutsen potentially, if he was to step down in the winter.
Well, I'm just talking money here. Bodø Glimt's resources are incredible. That they have, to be honest with you, Norway probably needs a different champion this year, if we're being honest out there. And I don't know what the listeners will think. Probably only Brand fans wouldn't want Viking to win it now. Because if Bodø Glimt win the title and then finish above Olympiacos in the Champions League group, then they're already in UCL next season. That's another 25 million in the coffers already. So just from a financial standpoint, Bodø Glimt could make a monopoly onto this league if we're not careful. So, but in terms of Viking, like, if they don't win the title this year, how gutting will they be? Like, seriously, they'll be this close. They could potentially just say they won 2 and drew 1. They could get 69 points and not win the league. You know, it wouldn't be a 69 that would be very enjoyable for them. But at the end of the day, sorry, that sounded a bit raunchy, didn't it? But you get my gist. I think it would be very deflating for them, and I don't know if they could come back from that. That's my point. So that's why I feel like it's now or never. I've got the feeling if they do win the title, that it would be difficult for them to defend it anyway. But they need to get the job done. They've been knocking on the door long enough. They really do need to get over the line here. In a way, I'd be quite gutted for them if they don't win it now. You know where I'm coming from. And I've been a massive fan of Buda Glimt's price because they've added something different to the league. But I would feel very, very sorry for Viking now if they don't get the job done.
Yeah, you have to give a shout out to the Morten Jensen and Beate Lunde Arsheim for the job they're doing there, Steve. I think it's an incredible job, really, and they've shown resilience. So, do you not foresee any slip-ups just before we move on? Fredrikstad away?
I don't see it. It's just the motivation factor now. A lot of these other teams are on their last legs a bit, and I think they're just better, and we know they can come back. Maybe they'll get a scare somewhere along the way, but they've shown enough Champions mentality. I mean, Buda Glimt as well, by the way. There's no guarantee they'll win their last 3 games. They should do, but Bryn are fighting for their lives. K from Oslo away drew a good record against Buda Glimt the last couple of years. And then, Fredrikstad at home, the last game. I think when you Buda Glimt, there's always a bigger target on your back, isn't there? Maybe that's why Vålerenga enjoyed the win so much, that they got one over the champions there.
And from your point of view, how good would it be to see Zlatko Tripic win the title? 11 assists this season, 10 goals. Peter Christensen, obviously the league top scorer as well for Viking. How good would it be to see him lift the title?
I think it'd be really good to see Tripic get the silverware. It'd be great for a lot of the fans. They're really well supported. They're one of the best supported clubs in the country. Yeah. I know there's a lot of listeners to this pod who are Viking fans, and they've been through the heartache. I say heartache. They've won trophies in recent years. They won Norwegian Cups, and it's not like they bottled a league on the last game of the season or anything. But they've been up there, and they've been disappointed how they didn't get over the line or at least get closer. So I think for them, it's really, really important that they get the title in the bag. It would get them also 1 game away from Champions League qualification next season. The second place team also does get into the UCL qualification, but you're facing tougher teams in that, like your teams from like Serie A, League One, and stuff like that.
Is that because of the coefficient they go?
Yeah, the coefficient now there's 2 places for the Champions League in Norway this season. But it's much better if you're the champions rather than the second. You've got to go through quite a long qualifying campaign if you finish second. Even if it's Bodø Glimt with their good coefficient, it'd be quite difficult for them to qualify for the Champions League. Third place now goes into Europa League qualifying.
So what happens to the champions? They go straight in?
The champions of Norway will go into the final qualifying round for the Champions League. So whoever it is will be 1 game away or 2 legs away from the group stage. From a Viking perspective, there would be a big dog whoever they end up playing properly. Bodø Glimt, because of their great coefficient, would have a much, much better chance. But if Viking win the league, they're guaranteed Europa League group stage, whatever, as well for next season. So it'd be huge for the club. They could kick on in time from it. And all right, it might be difficult to defend your title, but say the next 5 years, they could cement themselves as one of the really premier clubs in Norway with this title win. There's a lot on the line. This really is a pivotal title race, Jonathan. The result of this title race could shape Norwegian football for the next decade.
Big statement. And that is why we pay you, Steve. Well, we don't really pay you, do but big statement. And that is why we bring you in for your big opinions, to be fair. So, we only pay you through the patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. So if anyone wants to contribute, give Steve some money for his opinions. And then, of course, we very welcome it, and we reinvest it back into making this show. So there's a little cheeky, it's a shameless plug. But yeah, that's why you're here, to give the big opinions. It could reshape Norwegian football, in the words of Meatman Soccer Steve Wyss. Just to recap Vikings history, like you said there, they are 8-time winners of Eliteserien. They haven't won it since 1991. More than 30 years, Steve. So it would be some party. I do actually, funnily enough, still always remember in the early days of this podcast when we had Ian Birchnell on the show, who was obviously the former manager of Viking, and he came on to talk about what went wrong there. They went down, didn't they, in recent years as well, in the second division. And I remember what I remember from that interview, Steve, was the Viking fans, like, on Twitter and stuff. They really loved that interview. Do you know what I mean? You could sense it was a big club by the way that they kind of really tuned in to listen to that episode and commented, and I really remember the reaction to that. So, as you said, we have listeners who support Viking. Leave a message on Spotify, leave a message on YouTube. Let us know how excited you are, what you're planning, what will you do if you win the title. Have you got any big plans, maybe? But yeah, tweet us, let us know your thoughts. How nervous are you, even, maybe? But yeah, big statement from me.
You know what's startling about the league table, the Eliteserien, just before we finish the Eliteserien section? Look who's 8th and look who's 12th. You got Rosenborg and Molde. I mean, when we started doing this pod, there was only 2 teams that could realistically win the title. There was those 2. And now look where they are. Brann have been in the Obos. Viking have been in the Obos. Tromsø have been in the Obos since we started this pod. And Bodø Glimt.
Lillestrøm.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm coming from? It's crazy to see this in a way, where some of these clubs have been in our time covering NFP.
Just goes to show, Steve, good organisation, good recruitment. Things can always turn around, especially in a league like that with quite a lot of fluidity, like you say. I mean, it looks like if you look at Obos, some of the bigger teams who go down do come back, some struggle. But you have timely, with that mention of Rosenborg, led me on to my next question, Steve, which is another very loyal listener to this podcast, at Storm and Sotter. Skjotter, I think his or her name is pronounced. Why, Steve, are Rosenborg so bad in the second half? They are last in the form table in the last 10 games. I get they sold 2 big names and they have some injuries, but are they that thin of a roster? Is Alfred's job in trouble? Question mark. And I can answer that second part because I know for a fact his job is in a bit of trouble, because I've seen some of the tweets coming out of Rosenborg, people who cover Rosenborg, and the sort of maybe discontent there and the sort of the shakiness. But let's hear it in your words, Steve. A, what's wrong going on with their form? And B, what's going on with their roster? And C, is the manager in trouble?
Yeah, listen, I don't. I'm never a man for excuses, but
I sense, before you say that, I sense a Sean Constable. Who can ever forget the Sean Constable Rosenborg rant? I sense a rant coming here.
Okay. No, there isn't. No, I actually have sympathy for Rosenborg, because I think they did a lot of good things in the first half of the season, and they had a really good qualifying run in Europe Conference as well. Beat Mainz at home. Mainz are 3 out of 3 wins in Conference League now. So I think they put a lot of effort into that. They lost key players. The squad probably isn't as much quality depth as the manager wants. And then what happens is, and this happens in a lot of leagues, I follow a lot of leagues worldwide, and you get teams, what is often called being on the beach, when you just haven't got anything to play for. Rosenborg got to a stage where they couldn't get to the top 4 realistically. There were too many points to avoid relegation. In a way, it's a little bit worrying, because clubs that are really professional, clubs that are really motivational, will keep playing right to the end of the season. So there is a bit of the down tools a bit. I think that's maybe a slight concern. But I think the manager's earned enough credit over the last couple of seasons to continue in the job, and back him in the transfer window in January, and let's see what they can bring in. I'm not going to take these results recently that seriously, but I get why there's a lot of questions about it, because they're a big club, and perhaps it's not accepted to down tools in the last few game weeks. But they've just looked on the beach to me recently. Conceding too many goals fundamentally is the biggest problem.
Conceding too many goals. I mean, at the moment, I know you just sort of rattled off the table, Steve, and Mulder is just I don't know what's happening there. Obviously, in the most recent round of results as well on that Saturday by the closed pool, Steve, Mulder 4, Rosenborg 2. Mulder are kind of like you say they're not doing amazingly well either, but at least they.
It's a big win for Molde. If Molde hadn't won that, they'd be 2 points clear of relegation.
Just about to say that that pretty much keeps them up, which is I can't believe I'm almost saying that. It's a win that really, like you said, if they'd have lost that game, Steve, they would
Yeah.
be 2 points above Bryn. For crying out loud, who was sort of fighting for survival, and my boys Christiansen, Steve, they'd be behind, and they're still not clear of them. Still 2 points. They're only 2 points ahead of Christiansen with 3 games left. But just what I was going to say is, where do you see these two respective clubs finishing? Rosenborg don't have much more to play for, but they're still only 4 points off fifth. They still, I mean, they're not going to catch Tromsø, but they could do a little bit better. Can't get really too much worse for them, Steve, but they could go a lot further down the late table. They could end up actually finishing not in the well, they're not safe of relegation at this point, which is unbelievable to say it, but they could get in the relegation playoff if they lost every single game and all the other teams were on their way, which is unlikely, let's face it. But my point is, Steve, where do you see, to cut a long story short, where do you see Rosenborg and Molde finishing? And who do you see getting sucked into this relegation battle? Because Chris Haugesund are long gone, 9 points, Steve. Still never forget that episode where I couldn't, how bad they've been. Picked up slightly since then, but Godset fighting for their life, but they're nearly down. They're 8 points off it with 3 games left, Steve. If Bryn pretty much get 1 point now in their last 3 games, Godset are down, which is I find that unbelievable. Having visited the club last season, I thought they were like a well set up club at that point. Then you've got Bryn and 14th Steve, 28 points. Christiansen, like I say, 31 points, 3 games left. Molde, 33 points. Hamcom, 34 points. K from Oslo, 34 points. Sarpsborg, 35 points. And Rosenborg, 39 points. 36 points. All got 3 games left. So, like I say, all of them could finish anywhere, really. Molde and Rosenborg first. I want your predictions where they end up. And then secondly, who do you see getting sucked in?
I think Rosenborg will probably lose their next 2 games. They've got Vålerenga and Tromsø. The last match at home to Godset, they'll probably win that. But I don't see Rosenborg. Rosenborg might not even finish top half. And then Molde, they've got Haugesund to play. Haugesund just had a shock win, 4-1. Where that come from, I've no idea. But Molde will beat Haugesund. And then that will probably be enough for them. They probably will down tools the last 2 games, Molde. And then this relegation battle, I think everyone thought they were safe. But Bryn beat Brann 2-1. No one saw that score coming. And that has really put the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of Kristiansund, who probably thought they had enough points. They've got a 3-point gap to bridge, but a much better goal difference than KBK. So Kristiansund are the side that are sweating. Bryn have got Buda Glimt to play this weekend. So I think everyone down there is hoping that Buda Glimt win. And if that happens, then everyone is safe apart from Molde and Kristiansund. But I say Molde would then just need a point against Haugesund to be guaranteed safety on goal difference. So I think it's between Bryn and Kristiansund now. And Bryn have got, after the Glimt game, they've got a couple of winnable fixtures. So it's Kristiansund Godset this weekend. It's do or die for Godset. They have to win that game. Kristiansund could do with a win though now, couldn't they? As well. So I've got a feeling it's going to be Bryn. Bryn get the playoffs still. I'm not sure they might have to get 2 wins from the last 2 games, which wouldn't be easy.
Well, if they do get 2 wins in those 2 games, Steve, whoever scores the winner is definitely guaranteed at least 8 cartons of eggs, maybe even more, Steve. They might sort of throw the boat out and give them a bag of potatoes, or who knows, some turnips, as we know. For those who've been following Bryn this season, the Man of Match awards, the different various things they give as Man of the Match awards. But great to get your insight, Steve. Appreciate it very much. We will move on to part 2 now, where we will recap Allsvenskan. It's the final day coming up, and in part 2, we actually have some exclusive news for listeners. You don't want to miss this announcement in part 2. So stay with us after this short break.
Welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast. You with Steve Wyss and Jonathan Faduba. The Allsvenskan season is coming to an end. Just one game left. Where has time gone? Jonathan, what an incredible season. Mjällby, the champions, 72 points now they've racked up. And we're going to talk about the league table, matters at hand, and the final round, looking ahead to it. But you did tease us before the end of part one there. About some exclusive news, some juicy news to announce. So, what have you got to say,
Steve? Yes, welcome back to part 2 of the Nordic Football Podcast. Usually, Steve, we're breaking rank here in pod history because we don't normally do this, but we are going to break rank now to tell you to put in your calendars next week. Bookmark it. Write it down. Get your notebook out. Get your pen out. Get your Google Calendar out. Type in this now for next week because we can exclusively reveal to you that we will be joined next season by none other than the title-winning champion of Sweden, Mjällby manager Anders Torstensson, will be joining us exclusively on the podcast next week to talk about
everything,
history-making Mjällby team that has been talked about all around the world. Only on the Nordic Football Podcast, we're going to have an exclusive chat with the manager who's done this, won them the title. He will be there joining us. And I know Steve Wyss will not want to miss this one because 4 years ago, I remember he did miss that one. And I think he's had a bit of tinge of regret in his face ever since. But this is your chance, Steve. We've secured it. And there aren't many managers that I would sort of like, there aren't many guests we would actually announce before it's done. But based on last time, we're confident enough to say that Anders hopefully won't let us down. If this gets cancelled now, then we'll just cut it out and pretend it never happened. But yeah, we're very excited to talk about that. We're going to be sitting with Anders Torstensson to talk about winning the league. And Steve, do you know what I realised before I get your reaction to this? But do you know what I realised when he agreed to come on the show? This will be our first ever title-winning manager on the pod in the year they've won the league. So big moment for the podcast, really, because traditionally the bigger clubs are a bit, not every team in Sweden or Norway, which I never understood, to be honest, but they don't always see the value of doing an English language podcast. I mean, Steve, you might want to break ranks here and tell us about one particular guest that we've been trying to get for months and we keep getting a no. And I have no idea why. I don't know what there is to be afraid of. I do understand the language barrier can be an issue at times for managers, especially it's not easy, and I understand that, speaking in a second language. So that part of it I do understand, but the level of English is generally quite good in both countries. So yeah, sometimes we get a bit of reluctance from the bigger clubs. I'm looking at you, Oiko, I'm looking at you, Malmo, and your press officers. One or two others who kind of seem to sort of not see the value of coming on this show and talking to us because we're not going to ask you silly questions about, we don't tend to ask.
Well, the manager you're referring to is Guy Backer at Vålerenga. We've been trying to get Guy Backer on. To be fair, it's not actually him that's ever responded and said they don't want to do it. It's been the press officer. I just want to ask him about that tifo. That's what I would want to ask him about. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to get him on. But this is incredible news. I'm really looking forward to speaking with Anders Torstensson. Can't wait to ask him about his golf game, amongst other things, about winning a title, the record-breaking champions, of course. And, it's going to be really good. So if anyone wants us to ask him a specific question, a fun question maybe we can do it if you at us. But yeah, it's well done again to Mjällby. You know what really has struck me with Mjällby the last two games is how professional they've been since they've won the title. Job done. 5-0 win at Värnamo. They could have easily down tools if they wanted to, and just said, we're going to celebrate every single week. But these guys just are relentless. 22 wins out of 29, 1 defeat, 6 draws. Brilliant performance. Hammarby, We know they're finishing second, 59 points now for them. Geis, well done to Geis. They are in Europe for the first time in 31 years. They can't be caught now. Third place. Brilliant season for them. A whole host of teams still in the mix of a fourth place, which could be crucial if one of the top three do win the Swedish Cup in the new year. Fourth place can still get in Europe, and then down at the bottom of the table. We'll talk about that soon. But your reaction to Geis, Jonathan, here, getting third place. You've said numerous times this season you hope they do get into Europe. And I'm sure you're going to say it's richly deserved.
Yeah, firstly, just to reiterate what you said, if anyone who's got questions for Anders Torstensson, send it. Obviously, you can email us nordicfootballpod@gmail.com. You can tweet us at nordicfootpod. Leave a comment on iTunes, Spotify. We tend to pick them up, especially on Spotify. Steve, you had a comment this week, which I know you weren't too, well, I don't know what your thoughts on it were, but you had a comment at least, and Spotify seems to be popular for comments these days. But I just want to point out Mjällby, like you just said there about them being relentless, Steve. They are officially record-breaking champions now. They are the best team in a 30-game season in Allsvenskan history, which sums it all up, really. That is, you could say, maybe never to be repeated, to be honest, from a team this small, to do it that well. Unbelievable, the efficiency they've had in terms of, just like you said, win the league and keep going. Most teams, Steve, who win the title like this, I think when Leicester won the league, I don't remember if they won every game after that, but I definitely remember seeing pictures of Jamie Vardy like drinking
Having
champagne.
a party.
Yeah, so like you say, I thought they'd have a dip, but they haven't at all. They absolutely smashed the last few teams they've played. Guys, yeah, what do you say about Guys? I think it's phenomenal. I did actually, in a weird way, see this coming. I wouldn't say I predicted it, Steve, but I did sort of have repeatedly said on this show they're the one team this season that I've sort of looked at and I've gone, I see a plan here. I know what you're trying to do. And that has been you said it was an incredible season. I think some teams have been incredible, but I've definitely detected some teams have let their eye off, put the foot off the gas this season, in my opinion. But Guys are definitely not one of those teams. I've always looked at them and thought they've got a clear plan. They know what they're doing in and out of possession. I think the manager deserves massive praise, and there's no surprise, Steve. He's being linked with Mulder. Linked with Mulder. Mulder wishes they could get him at this moment in time, probably. But he's being linked with Malmo, who's still looking for a manager. Very highly rated young manager there at Guys, very popular amongst the players. Like you said, they sort of wrapped it up with well, it wasn't an amazing result, was it, against Osters? But obviously via the fact that Malmo once again couldn't get it done in that sort of race for a top three place, Steve, at the weekend during away to Häcken. That basically meant that if Guys could get a couple of points, they were there, and it was done. And they got a point against Osters, obviously with Diff as well. Djurgården drawing 0-0 with IFK Göteborg. That pretty much meant it's a done deal. So Guys will celebrate. They'll celebrate long and hard into the night, Steve, especially the fact that they will finish above IFK. They're big rivals, and beating them to a place in Europe is even juicier. So that they're Gothenburg's biggest club this year in terms of statistical record. So yeah, a huge praise, really. That's all you can sort of say. It has come with consequences, I guess, Steve, a little bit in terms of just to sort of go back to Big Sig's question. I don't know if he was only maybe referring to Norway, but in terms of players who could leave, it's looking like Diabate, Steve, will be off. For one, he's he's been an incredible player this season, and obviously he got one of the goals at the weekend. But yeah, they're going to lose quite a few players because I think they've got quite a good squad. They've got some very good players. It seems that he is now going to be moving to Al Ahly in Egypt, Diabate, Steve, for about roughly $1.5 million, I think, US dollars. So a big move for him. Massive club in Africa. They're one of the biggest clubs in the continent. So from that point of view, I think he's getting a hefty payout. So he'll make some good money, and he's a good striker. He deserves a big move, I think, because he's been brilliant this season. But yeah, I think I can't really praise Guys enough, Steve. I think on the ball, off the ball, like I say, defensively, they can mix up their game plan. They've got players like Budry, who's been really effective. Players like Lundgren, Wendon Thomason. I've been really impressed in recent weeks with a few other of their players, Steve. And yeah, it was Nicholas and Petrovic. I think he's been really good in recent months. So yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, huge congratulations to Geis. What does it tell you about the chasing pack, Jonathan? I mean, there's a lot of big clubs there, 4th to 8th. Aikor, Gothenburg, Diff, Malmo, Elfsborg. I think it's looking back, pretty poor year, perhaps for all of them in a way. Maybe EF Core, because they've been struggling in recent years, it's a much better season. But a damning indictment could be on them that they've been beaten by these top three. And the race is on for 4th now. IE Core actually in the destiny's in their own hands with goal difference at this point in time. But I mean, I think there's been disappointments there for sure, hasn't there?
Yeah, if I'm being brutal, I think it tells you that they've just not been good enough, Steve. It's as simple as that. I think with the budgets, the episode we had a few weeks ago when we talked about the respective budgets in Allsvenskan and how low Mjällby's budget is to be winning the league, lower than Varnamo's, for example, their sort of annual playing budget. And obviously Varnamo have sunk without a trace. Not as bad as Haugesund, but still not a great season for them. 10 points adrift with 1 game left. But I think it tells you that they haven't been good enough. It tells you how relentless Mjällby are, by the way, because like you said, 1 defeat in 29 games is just ridiculous pace to keep. And I don't think anyone ever saw that coming. No matter how well they've done, no matter how good their players are, no matter how good Torstensen is as a manager, no matter how good the coaching staff, I just don't think anyone could have seen this coming. If Malmo put this season together, people would be raving. It's nearly an unbeaten. It's as good as you'll get to an unbeaten season if they don't lose their last game. So from that point of view, phenomenal. But when you look lower down the table, Steve, I mean they're 24 points above Oikor. That is just,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm tempted to say pathetic, really. 20. How can you be 26 points behind Mjällby in a 30-game season?
Well, I'll tell you what's happened, right, is Mjällby are a very, very good team, the record-breaking team. But we've said it this season, we're not sure about the quality levels of this league in as a whole. What Mjällby have done is a very, very professional job. They've beaten these teams really well and done the job. The other teams haven't done that. And I think there's a case for saying that some of these teams, certainly 4th to 8th, should be in the mid 50 points sort of range. Really?
Yeah, but Steve, I take that point. But how can you be 26 Malmo or even Djurgården, to be fair? Like Djurgården aren't a traditional powerhouse. Don't get me wrong; they had a great run to this. I mean, they are a traditional powerhouse, sorry, but they're not the biggest club in the league, if that makes sense. In the last 5 years or so, they've won the league once, I think, in the last sort of 5-6 years. But someone like Malmo, who's they're the dominant. It's like Bayern Munich. How can imagine if Bayern Munich were 26 points behind Bochum? And they don't even play a 30-game season. How
Yeah.
can it be possible, Steve? That's nearly 10. That's nearly 10 full defeats more.
Well, from Malmo's perspective, it's like Malmo not acceptable.
Mathematically, think about it. Mathematically, that is nearly 10 extra defeats. That is absolutely, in a 30-game season, Steve. That is absolutely ridiculous.
It is
If you actually really think about it, it is shameful. To be honest, for Malmo, that is unacceptable.
Where do they go from here?
For
Malmo,
Djurgården, for teams like Djurgården, EF Core, or Core, you can maybe give a pass. That's what my point I'm trying to make, because Mjällby have just been relentless. But even then, 24 points behind is crazy in a 30-game season. We haven't even played the 30 games. It's only 29 games. Could be even more by the end of the weekend. But it tells you that I think if you do look a bit further down, obviously guys have had a good season. Hammarby, I think, have given it a good fight. I do think they ran out of steam a little bit, and maybe losing some players didn't help to Nepti and players like that. Maybe there's some mitigating circumstances because they are now 13 points behind Mjällby, which isn't great really. Even they've lost 6 games, and they're finishing second. EFK have had a better season. Obviously, they've for them from their point of view, I think they've fitness. I talked about the fitness coach in the preseason episode, and he really has had a big impact, I think, on EFK Göteborg, because they just look a much fitter, organised, better unit compared to last season when they nearly got relegated. And of course, I think they've had a creditable year, Steve. If they had this year, last season, I might be working at EFK right now, because this time last year, it all hinged on them not getting relegated. So thanks for that, EFK. But the rest of them, Steve, teams like Oikor with the budget they have, you know, the amount of money they have in terms of revenue from the stadium and your garden, it's just not really good enough. You look lower down the table, teams like Hacken, you know, Hacken are
That's not good enough, really, either, is it? Let's be honest. For 10th place for Hacken.
they're 37 points behind Miyabi. I mean, it's almost like they're in a different league. So, you know, basically, Steve, every team in the league except Geis and Miyabi has lost more than 5 games. So that tells you, really, in my opinion, you know, it's kind of it's a wishy-washy season, in my opinion. There's not really that many strong teams. Teams can beat each other, small margins. And I know we're going to talk about fantasy in a minute. It's affected my fantasy because it's been quite, in my point of view, it's been quite hard to predict some of these games just because you can't really hang your hat on many of these teams this season, to be honest.
Well, yeah, it's one of those. If we were doing end of season term reports on these sides, the grades wouldn't be very high, would they? For most of them, you know, I'm almost tempted.
There'd be detention.
I'm almost tempted to do it, but we'll save that for another day. But look, Malmo. Where do Malmo go from here? Look, there's all sorts of rumours and talk that they're in for a really big off season, that they're going to clear out officials in the club. There's going to be a gutting of the squad. They've targeted apparently 5 or 6 new players to come in. They're going to get a new manager, and you know, they will start 2026 as the favourites for the Allsvenskan title, no doubt about it. But this is a damning year. 7th place, right? They could finish as low as 7th, which is, well, I talk about end of season term reports. It would be ungraded in an exam. So where do they go from here? What sort of manager do they need, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of them would have detention. I mean, ironically, this did happen in not too long ago, 2022 season, Steve. They finished in 7th place, and that was considered, like, I think it was the lowest they'd finished in, I think, 2 decades nearly, or something along those lines. It was a really historically bad season. They came back next year, Steve, and won the league. So you can't ever write off Malmo, really. They did win that league. That's the next season, though, on goal difference. No one will ever forget how Elfsborg blew that one on the second last day of the season, really. But obviously, it went down to the final game, didn't it? And Elfsborg threw that away. But, you know, even Elfsborg this season, I mean, there's teams that we haven't even really spoken about much this season, just because they've done nothing.
Elfsborg who?
Elfsborg was really disappointed. You know, I don't know. We need maybe a deeper dive. Maybe we'll do an episode like that, kind of deep dive, like you said, like maybe grade them all. But, you know, look at Elfsborg on 40 points. I don't know, and they're still 8th. So they've lost 13 games. So that's nearly half the games. So yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment. But I think Malmo, you can't write them off. Where do they go from here? Well, they need a new manager. They need to sort of You know, I would have thought. I know that he's already got a job now, but I think I would have quite liked Graham Potter to take the Malmo job. I think
That's
that'd have been
far below, way below what Graham Potter's
I think
expectations
that'd have
would
been
be.
interesting. I'd just like to see it. I'm not saying that it would happen, but I just like to. I think that'd be an interesting project. He's obviously past that now with Sweden. Interestingly enough, he called Taha Ali into his squad, which was I thought that was noteworthy, into his first Sweden squad, but he's pulled out with injury now. But they need a good manager, Steve. The rumours at the moment, and I did say to you off air that I don't. I would love someone to write in and tell me what is this new trend of taking one of the statistically worst managers in the league and giving them the manager's job. Because Russell Martin to Rangers, there's others that you could talk about. It worked in the case of Vincent Kompany, obviously at Bayern. He looks unbelievable there. But the favourite for a lot of these jobs at the moment is Martin Falk. Obviously, he must be a very good coach, Steve. I know he's highly rated in terms of coaching circles. And obviously, if you're 30 years old and you're a first-team manager, you have to be doing something right, of course. But he's currently one of the favourites for these jobs. And his Norrköping side could actually get relegated this weekend. So I know there's this new trend now. Obviously, we're looking more at metrics rather than actual results because it doesn't maybe indicate the manager's performance. And you can say that it doesn't sort of fully reflect their ability and maybe they can do better in a better environment. But is the point of, is there a counter argument, Steve, where you can get the balance wrong? I mean, is your job not to motivate players and get results as well? I don't know where you sit on that debate.
Well, this was a debate this week about Will Still at Southampton. Now, my opinion of Will Still is if he's brilliant tactically. I still think he can go all the way to the top, but there has been some criticism that from the actual motivational side of things, from the dressing room side of things, he hasn't maybe got it. And that's where you need to have decent assistants, I think, to, good cop, bad cop. And that could be perhaps an issue here. I mean, the young manager at Norrköping has, look, let's talk about the relegation battle now, because it looked done, didn't it, in terms of the teams down there. But there's been Norrköping's run of, 5 straight defeats has put them in trouble. And, there's teams down there fighting for their lives, Jonathan, right? Oster and Degerfors have given it a right good crack of late. I mean, you would have seen it, the Oster's game against Gais. Last second of the game, he's basically done a last man foul, took the red card because the guys will probably score. You fighting for tooth and nail. Degerfors have really shown incredible fights since I slaughtered them. And we're in a position now, Norrköping need a point against FK Gothenburg. If they don't get that and Degerfors win, they are in the playoff. And Osters are not out of it either. Goal difference could be a thing there. So Norrköping, what's gone wrong? Do you see them getting the point at IFK?
Well, I think you make a very interesting point there about Will Steele. And, I don't know Martin Falk personally. I've never watched any of his training sessions. So it's hard to personally comment. But I definitely think there is a rising trend of we had it with Kalle Carlson of Västerås, by the way, who we'll talk about in a minute. Congratulations on them winning promotion back to Allsvenskan. He was hotly tipped despite the fact they got relegated purely because his underlying metrics of Västerås last season were really good. Didn't get him a bigger job in the end, but he's now back in Allsvenskan after obviously winning promotion. But there is this growing trend now, isn't it? When clubs are looking at maybe the data underlying. But what my point I'm making is not about Martin Falk, really. It's more about what can you get a bit too underlying? Do you know what I mean? How underlying does underlining go before you start to miss the overlying? Do you get what I'm trying to say? They could get relegated. Now, like I said, I'm not trying to judge Martin Falk here, but there is that trend, isn't there? Russell Martin, Will Steele, Vincent Kompany. It seems to be something that's happening a lot. Now, the mitigating circumstances, I mean, in Vincent Kompany's case, Burnley, they're obviously they're a really underdog side, right? They're not going to do much in the Premier League, to be honest. Norrköping are a massive club. Where I'll give Martin Falk credit is Norrköping have been a bit of a mess for the last few years. Behind the scenes, that I know that internally at the club, there's been a lot of problems that have come out publicly. In terms of operationally, budget, they're sort of struggling money wise. Haven't made the best of some of the players they've had over the years, Steve, that they transferred out. Players like Adik Benro. Don't forget this is a club that's had some really top players that they've sold on over the years. I'm trying to think of the Icelandic kid now that they had who went to FC Copenhagen, for example, whose name escapes me now. But they've had plenty of good players that they've sold in Norrköping, but they just haven't seemed to reinvest the money, and now they're in financial difficulties. So it is a tough season for them. I've seen that the fans are trying to rally Martin Falk now behind them this weekend because, like I say, they could, although they're sort of a 3 points gap and they've got slightly better goal difference than Osters, they're not completely safe. Looking at the final game, Steve, just to recap, obviously on Sunday then we've got AIK Halmstad, Brommapoikene, Degerfors, Hammarby, Elfsborg, IFK Norrköping, Malmö Gais, Mjällby Häcken, Osters, Djurgården, and Sirius Värnamo. I think Norrköping have got a really tough game away to IFK, by the way. I think that's going to be difficult for them. From what I'm reading behind the scenes, it does seem like IFK are going to sort of try and make sure that they're up for this game. They're not going to, throw it away by any means. There's been some sort of comments coming out of the camp and that they're focused on it. They want to go out with a bang. So it won't be an easy game by any means. Osters have shown a bit of signs of life, haven't they, Steve? With a good point away to Gais. Djurgården is a really, really tough game, though. And Degerfors have been fantastic, really, to be fair, what they've done. So and BP is obviously a bit of an easier game for them. So, it's going to be a very interesting final day.
I think Norrköping are in trouble. I think, IFK Gothenburg, if they're in the battle for fourth place, that could get them in Europe. They're not just going to down tool. They're the clear favourites at home. And Degerfors are nearly odds on to beat Brommapoikene. Brommapoikene have the worst home record out of any team in this league. 10 losses at home out of 14 for Brommapoikene. The worst home record in terms of defeats. 10 losses out of 14. I think Degerfors go there and win. And I think, in which case, it will be a situation where they will get into the playoff. Osters, I don't see getting anything against Djurgården, but when livelihoods are at stake, you never know. They're fighting tooth and nail. But I think Norrköping are in trouble. We know the teams coming up from Allsvenskan, from Superettan. Big congratulations to Kalmar, only lost one game, by the way. And Västerås as well have finished in second place. Big congrats there. Örgryte are going to be in the playoff. Now, if we've got Norrköping against Örgryte, there's actually two pretty big clubs against each other in a playoff. I don't think who would Örgryte want to play right now, by the way? Like, who would they want to play? Osters probably, I guess, but you've got a Norrköping side who are clearly better on paper, but in freefall.
I mean, that would be a brilliant game, to be honest. Over 2 legs, that would be incredible. Yeah, I don't know what your question was really, but
Actually, what was my question? My question. I didn't actually ask you a question. Let's get your predictions anyway. Which way do you think it will end? And then give us your playoff prediction as well.
Yeah, that was my fault there. I sort of wandered off actually. I was thinking about some interesting comments that have come in about Robin Olsen, who, by the way, I think he's been really. I agree with what you said about Malmo, but the keeper, by the way, I think Malka Elborg's been really good. Anas Mavrak, the interim coach, has come out tonight and said that Malka's been good in training when he's got the chance, and that's the reason that he's playing ahead of him at the moment. But I think Robin Olsen's days are numbered. I think he's one of the major problems at Malmo at the moment. I think he's really been poor, to be honest. But yeah, in terms of who will go down, I'm always worried, Steve. My biggest, probably, you talked about on the beach. That was your words, wasn't it? My biggest red flag, I'd say one of them anyway, is when players at a club are already talking about leaving when the season's not over yet. And reading Daleho Irenda's quotes at BP, he's already talking about maybe moving next season. And when I hear that from players, it tells me one thing, Steve, that they are not focused on the last game of the season. So I have a feeling Degerfors could get a result there. Probably push for a win. If they're overexposed, though, they could lose because BP are quite good on the break, and they can open you up. So, but I think Degerfors need to win. Osters, I think, will go down, Steve. Realistically, I can't see them beating Djurgården is a tough ask. Especially in the form they're in and just how generally they've got so many weapons up their sleeve. I think they could maybe get a point, but to beat them, they're gonna have to beat them well as well to sort of even if they beat them and Norrköping only lost by 1 goal, it'll be even, wouldn't it? And Norrköping will score way more goals. So I think Osters will go down. The game I can't predict, honestly. I'm just gonna have to sit on the fence. Is IFK Norrköping? I just don't know what IFK will turn up because they have got the tendency to flake in big moments at times. IFK. So I really genuinely can't predict it. This is Martin Falk. This is your chance now. Prove to me that you deserve the Malmo or Mjällby job. Over to you.
A point should do it unless Degerfors win 7-0, which isn't out of the question, by the way. But I mean, IFK Gothenburg have a poor home record again. 7 defeats at home, 6 wins, 1 draw. Why they're better away from home. I don't know why Gamla Ullevi is not a fortress anymore.
Do you know what we should do? You should predict it because you seem to have a good read on Allsvenskan this season. So what is your prediction?
Degerfors win. Degerfors will beat Brommapoikina. Brommapoikina have nothing to play for whatsoever. And they're not just on a beach, they're in like the Seychelles, aren't they? They're miles away from it. Degerfors win. What I will say is this, and this goes in the favour of Osters and Norrköping, right? The big game for motivation at the top of the table there. IKOR are in control of 4th place. If they beat Halmstad at home, which they should win, really, IKOR should be beating Halmstad at home, then I think the other teams might look at the scoreboard and think, we're not going to get 4th place now. IFK are three in goal difference behind them. Djurgården are obviously 2 points behind them, so are Malmo. So if we look at the scoreboard and IKOR are 3-0 up against Halmstad, which is very possible, then you lose a little bit of edge, and that's where it plays into Norrköping's hands. So
Yeah.
having said that, I think they're in trouble, Norrköping. I'm starting to now envisage the scenario where they get that draw that they need. But it all
Yeah.
depends on the IE core game, I think there's a lot on, believe it or not, that is the game that's affecting the other two teams' motivation.
It's a fair point.
So,
I mean, by the way, one thing we have to say before we wrap up, because I want to just talk about Allsvenskan fantasy quickly, because that was where I was going to say about your read this season. You've read it quite well. You've done quite well in the fantasy league. But hats off to Halmstad, by the way. 3 wins in the last 6 to secure safety. Got a point at Bromma at the weekend to basically confirm that they will be staying in this division, because for a long period this season, Steve, they've looked like they could be toast. So fair play to them. I know obviously results went their way as well for that point, but I know they've been battered by EF Core and Osters in recent weeks. But apart from that, Steve, wins away to Degerfors, home to Hammarby, and away to Varnamo have kept them in the division. So fair play to them. You've got to give some praise, because I thought Hamstad would be. I thought they'd be in the conversation at this point. So to be safe is I think, a big achievement. I have to give credit to Halmstad, especially as they lost some key players in this over the last few months. So fair play to them as well. But yeah, I think Degerfors can just about survive, and I'd be really happy for the manager as well, Hannes Goitom, if they pull that off. But the rest of it, watch this space. Like I say, over to you, Martin Falk.
yeah, and then obviously, if Degerfors win, they're in the playoff at worst. That's what we will say. So, and they'd have every chance of that or great. It'll be over 2 legs. But yeah, do you know what? I'm gonna predict draw. AFK Gothenburg, Norrköping draw. So Norrköping just hang on. I've seen so many times, mate, over the last 10 years, a big team down there. It's usually EF Core, isn't it? Just somehow scrape survival. This would be, if Norrköping went down, it would be the biggest team to go down that I can remember from Allsvenskan. No offense to Helsingborg here, but they would be the biggest team. I mean, IE did get relegated about 20 years ago, I think, maybe 15, but they would be the biggest team I've ever. It just doesn't. They always find a way, usually somehow, but they're gonna have to show some balls here. Nyman's going to be big for them. And EF Core's home record is dangerous, but yeah. Let's see. So all to play for. Every match kicks off at the same time, 2 p.m. UK time on a Sunday. It's 3 p.m. local. So there's only a couple of games where there's nothing at stake. Hammarby, Elfsborg, and Sirius Varnamo. So talking about serious game, pretty obvious captaincy choice for Allsvenskan fantasy this week, I think. When you're home to Varnamo last game and you want a stat pad. Allsvenskan fantasy is going to get close as well in the NFP league. A man who's been right up there at the top is Ross Bullen, but he enters the final week 3 points adrift of Ivan Turinas Aikor, Robert Unuga, as a 3-point advantage there. And third place is John Hamilton Ward with an interesting name called Person of Interest. And those three they've probably got enough over fourth place, who is about 25 points adrift. So Allsvenskan fantasy, we wish the very best to everyone up there in the battle for the NFP title. Some new names up there as well, Jonathan, this season compared to previous editions.
Yeah, I do like that name, by the way. Fair play to Person of Interest. I like that one. I'm disappointed in my season, to be honest, this year. Have to admit, I didn't think I would be struggling so much, Steve, behind you, which is upsetting. But you've had a good year, to be fair. You are currently sat in 23rd place in the Nordic Football Pod League, whilst I'm a lowly 52nd. So, yeah, disappointing year for me after beating you the last 2 years running. But, I mean, who's your money on, Steve? Even Torina's, is it going to be Robert Ununga? 2,065 points. He's only 3 points. He's had a brilliant week, by the way. 83 points, put him top of the table. Ross Bullen's got to be gutted after his 69-point haul at the weekend, Steve. He captained Priska, which was proven to be maybe his downfall in the title race. It's a bit of a Steven Gerrard slip there, because obviously the 83 points from Ivan Turinas Oiko involved Diabate as his captain. So that has swung the title race. But it's all to play for in the Nordic Football Podcast Fantasy League. So good luck to everyone. Thanks a lot for participating, of course. Really appreciate it. We'll give
Do you know what? I've just looked. Ivan Turinas still has a wild card to play. So he will be using his wild card on the last game. So he can put the best 11 out he possibly can. With the fight, he's got to be. He has to be the favourite with that ship in hand.
Well, you
But
could get it wrong if you overthink it.
well, yeah. I mean, the captaincy is going to be a big choice. Everyone will get to know the lineups for the final game, of course. I usually like to have a chip left for the final round, but I don't have one this year. I went with the dynamic duo the other week, and that was the week that Stroud got ill, so I missed out on some points there. Yeah, you're right. I've had a decent enough season. Seem to have picked up the players at the right time. It's the way it goes. Sometimes you have a poor. You just didn't get out of the traps strong enough, did you? That was probably what cost you this
No,
season.
the double. What always kills me was the double game week. I didn't use my bench boost, and that was it basically. This season there hasn't been enough. There hasn't been enough room to get back after if you miss that chip that week.
Oh, the part of the bus. Yeah, I've always nailed that chip. I don't know what it is. I've always nailed that chip.
Double game week.
Yeah, I do like double game weeks, but there's not many of them in Allsvenskan.
Well, only been one this season, and that's killed me because I didn't use it that week. So that was the end of it. Really, everyone else did. So that was my downfall. That I think that 100 points or so was basically where you've done me. But you live and learn. I'm interested to see next week. You know, we still got 3 games of Eliteserien. I discarded my team months ago, so I won't be anywhere near that one. But be interesting to see who's topping that one as well. So we'll recap it as well. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter at Nordic Foot Pod. We'll post the winners and patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast if you do want to, like I say, contribute with a little bit to help run the show. Steve, that's pretty much it. But there's one final talking point that I cannot let you get away without asking me.
A final talking point.
Mm-hmm.
Which one's that? Which one?
Check your messages.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry.
You acknowledged it.
Yeah, I've acknowledged it. Yeah. There is a retiree. Last game of the season, I said there's nothing at stake in Hammarby against Elfsborg. Well, there is for one man.
One man indeed, Steve, and that man, old man Johan Larsson, we've got to say goodbye to him. He's not only a fantasy legend, but just a general Allsvenskan legend, Steve. He will be hanging up his boots, according to himself anyway, at the end of this season. He's had a tough time of things in the last few years, Steve, obviously with struggling for minutes and you know, who can forget earlier in the season, Steve, probably my favourite moment of the entire campaign when he turned that game against the FK Göteborg around with those incredible wonder goals and ran off to the fans. There's old dog in his life. There's life in this old dog yet, he said as he ran off. And it was I thought it was just a beautiful moment in terms of like in life, basically. It was like a life moment, like, you know, raging against the dying of the light. But unfortunately, Steve, everyone's day comes eventually. His light is fading at the end of this season. He will be retiring. They had a tribute to him, Steve, at the weekend because obviously it was his last home game for Elfsborg. He is a legend at the club, Steve. He left the field to massive applause. But what I really liked, Steve, was the comments from Per Frick, which I'm gonna just read out some of them because I thought this was a beautiful moment, Steve. Per Frick obviously has played with him for a long time. We talked about it earlier in the season when Larsson got those goals, and everyone came out and was saying, you know, everyone was really happy for him because he'd really swallowed his pride at Elfsborg to sit on the bench and kind of, you know, put himself before the team's interest really in some ways. Sorry, put the team before his own interest in some ways. And Per Frick's comments at the end of the game, I mean, it left a bit of a lump in my throat, to be fair. He said, so basically after the game, Steve, in the mix zone, after this 3-0 defeat to Oyikor, Per Frick was asked about Johan Larsson, and Per Frick came and hugged Larsson as he left the field. And when he spoke to the media, Steve, he started crying, Per Frick. And he said, I'm sensitive. Larsson deserves more than losing 3-0 to a pretty average Oyikor. It's a real disappointment. He deserves more. That's all you can say. And then he went on to say, he's meant a lot to me. It's clear to me that he has been here for quite a few seasons that I've been here, and except for the time, obviously, when he went abroad. He was here when we won the gold, and we were close in 2023 When he came back in 2020, we were really bad, but he helped lift this group. We nearly won the league. We got a European adventure from it, and he made the whole city and club believe again. It's a shame we couldn't have won the league for him, but now it's others who have to try and become the new Johan Larsson. They then asked him, what has he meant to you on a personal level? He said, we're the same age. He's been a role model, even though he's a few years older and broke through a little quicker than me. He was the young guy who took things into his own hands and showed it's possible for the rest of us in the same generation that you can break into the A team from the youth team and become a key player. And I just thought when he broke into tears, Steve, I just thought that was usually you get players, they break into tears at their own retirement, but to see a player break into tears about someone else's retirement, I think that probably does sum up Johan Larsson as a player and as a man, probably, and a bit of an Allsvenskan legend, I'd say.
Yeah, in the 2020 season, he picked up 162 fantasy points, 142 points the season after. I'm pretty sure he was the difference one season. I beat you by 5 points in fantasy, and he was the difference. So he always has great memories for me. It hasn't worked out for him this season, and tempted to almost play Football Manager now. The new FM has come out, and you'll be able to play Johan Larsson for one more season, won't you, on there? We wish him all the best, actually. And, tough final game, isn't it? Hammarby away. But I'm sure he'll be trying to get on the score sheet to conclude his career. Maybe that could be a bonkers, like 4-3 sort of game where there's nothing at stake and everyone just goes for it. Maybe he might get a goal.
Dare you, Steve, or dare Robert Unninger or any of the others at the top, Captain Johan Larsson on the final day.
I'd back him to score any time, I think, on the betting. I say, I've seen on the last game of the season, there's always a random like 3-3 draw, 4-3, isn't they? This could be it.
Yeah,
this could be it. Maybe he gets one. He'll be on the free kicks. He'll be on the penalties, won't he? I bet he's on the penalties.
It made me think of you, Steve, in this podcast. One day I'll be saying a tribute to you, saying, Meat Man Soccer. With tears running down my eyes, I'll be giving you a glowing tribute.
Retiring from podcasting duties, I get a guard of honour.
I just thought it was a beautiful moment. Like two friends, you know what I mean, who've been through it all. Like, what a shame they didn't win the league that year, eh?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
They forced chance.
I can still see it now. That ridiculous 2-on-1.
What a miss!
They should have won the league, and this is, I said about Viking earlier. You've got to take your chance while you can. Because he might never come again.
Yeah, it's a good point.
He'll think about that for the rest of his life, won't he? Probably.
He's just mentioned it there, and it's 2 years later. So, I'll never forget that 2v1 chance, Steve, to win the league at home, last minute. Oh.
I was pleased for Jimmy Telling that actually won the Scottish Cup for Aberdeen, because the manager deserves something. But the players, it's hurting me even thinking about it, Jonathan. I can't do any more.
But you're right. It does that sums it up. Like you said, you've got to take your chance, Viking. You have to take your chance.
You gotta.
That's where we'll leave it.
That will do for this episode. Thank you very much, everyone. Do leave your comments. And actually, there's one more thing before I go. There's someone has sent a tweet in while we're live on air. And this is VI Raider. Thanks so much for your comment. Will we ever see Haugesund again in the top flight? Can Bryn survive the playoff battle to stay up next season? Where would Lillestrøm rank in the Eliteserien this season? I'll give you 3 quick answers. Haugesund, let's say 5 years' time, we see them back. Bryn definitely could survive a playoff battle because they're in some form. And I think Lillestrøm would rank about 9th this season if they're in Eliteserien. And next season, they'll probably come up and look towards the top half. So thanks so much for your comment there, VI Raider. Appreciate that one. And we'll see everyone next time on the podcast. Thanks, Jonathan. Take care and enjoy the final round of Allsvenskan. Goodbye.